There isn't anything that you could do right now that would expose you as a servant of the colonizers more than to attack the rulers in the Arab world. It's honestly pathetic. The more obvious it becomes that specifically the Gulf states and Egypt have been by far the most active players in opposing Israel, in strategizing the fall of Zionism, in coordinating international support for the establishment of a Palestinian state, preventing the expulsion and the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians from Gaza, using their combined wealth literally to buy out American influence in the region. The more obvious this becomes, and it's becoming quite obvious, the more frantic and the more desperate these colonial pick-me types are getting. You know, you see them online right now trying to urge Egyptians to revolt against the government. Even while right at this moment, aid trucks are literally being sent into Rafah. You know, humanitarian relief is being airdropped by the UAE into Gaza. These people are calling upon Egyptians to overthrow Sisi to quote-unquote force open the border. I mean, are you following the news? They're calling for Muslims to boycott the Hajj because supposedly Saudi Arabia is complicit, so-called. They're fabricating lie after lie after lie, slander after slander. Absolutely panicked that the neocons and the Zionists are actually losing power in the region. You know? And one of the reasons that they're doing this is because the mainstream narrative is shifting right now. Everyone can see it. The narrative is shifting in the mainstream media against Israel. And it's doing that because of what the GCC is doing. Now it's allowed to be anti-genocide. It's allowed to condemn Israel's crimes. Western governments are now coming out against it, and they're coming out in support of a Palestinian state because of GCC influence, because of GCC lobbying and strategic investment. That's why. There's not another reason. So now the narrative is shifting, and public sympathy is not being as censored as it was before, and public outrage is now at an all-time high. So these people are desperate to redirect all that emotion, redirect all that outrage away from Israel, where it belongs, and channel it now against the very governments, the very leaders, who are the ones who have accomplished this narrative shift. The ones who have been really working tirelessly for 2 years to try to make this happen. It's despicable. There's not another word for it. You're mad because the Arabs have operated with tact and with strategy instead of doing what you wanted to do, which was to act rashly and irresponsibly. You're mad because the Muslims have actually outmaneuvered the West instead of just thrown themselves into open conflict. You're mad because the Muslims didn't get played. You're mad that they didn't escalate and that they didn't give the neocons the rationale that they wanted for region-wide carnage. You're mad because your, frankly, adolescent Islamism depends on proving that the Muslim rulers are incompetent, proving that they're corrupt, so that then you can get your own Muslim Brotherhood functionaries in power to be basically colonial administrators on behalf of the United States, because that's all they ever would be. And that just shows the abysmal depths of your own political ignorance and incompetence and your own corruption. I mean, wallahi, it's amazing. You've got all these Ikhwani groups, all these Muslim Brotherhood groups, all these so-called Islamist exiles living in the West with all their organizations, with all their institutes, you know, with all their activists, all their public figures out there in the West. But you've still not been able to make an inch of headway in shifting Western policy on Israel and Palestine. Meanwhile, the GCC, the leaders that you deride, that you revile, that you despise, those leaders have been able to recruit the UK, France, Spain, Italy, Iceland, Portugal, on and on and on, to support a Palestinian state. That's what they've been able to do. They were able to convene right there in New York City a conference on Palestinian statehood while you're over there protesting at the Egyptian embassy. You understand? You don't think everyone can see who's really complicit? Who's really working for the West? Who's really serving the West, serving the Zionists? It's you people. Camouflage neocons. Like I said, colonizer activists. Ikhwan al-Mujrimin. Because you can't stand for the Muslims to not hate their leaders because you want to be their leaders. You see? But you don't have any competence, you don't have any capabilities, you don't have any skills, so you can't gain support by talking about how great you are. You can only gain support by creating discord and creating loathing for the Muslim leaders. You can't get anyone to support you on your own merits, so you have to just try to tear down the rulers that we have, so that maybe you can get the seat when it becomes empty. And you're so ignorant, wallahi, you're so ignorant and so out of touch that you do not even understand the politics or the economics behind what's happening right now. You don't understand that. You have an obsolete understanding. You're actually trying to win favor with the neocons because you're so disconnected from reality, so uninformed, that you still think that the neocons are the dominant political force in America. You know, it's just like Netanyahu. You're just like Netanyahu in this regard. He thinks it's 2005, not 2025, and you're the same. You have no clue how the world is moving. And you can't understand that the reality that the Arab states have been instrumental in changing how the world is moving. They're playing a big part in that. I mean, I'm seeing people online spreading these old videos of protests in Egypt. I mean, old videos, saying that they're new videos, saying that there's an uprising in Egypt underway. Imagine that you can lie your way into a revolution in a country that you don't even live in. They're even putting out fake AI videos, trying to make people think that there's a revolt going on. It's insane. Spreading videos that are claiming that the UAE aid trucks are empty when they enter Rafah. We have confirmed testimony, tons of food and humanitarian relief coming into Gaza right now. I've seen people saying that the aid drops, the airdrops of aid into Gaza, they're just doing it for good PR. Wallahi, they belittle every positive thing that the Muslims are doing. You're bad faith actors. That's what you've stooped to. And the most pathetic part about it is that you are stooping to that level, to that depth, trying to cause problems because you think that's what the neocons want. Because you don't even understand that the neocons are not even the dominant power anymore in Washington. You're actually willing to destabilize the Muslim lands in order to win favor with an out-of-favor political faction. While the dominant faction is aligned with the Muslims now. They're aligned with stability, aligned with Israel's isolation and abandonment. They're aligned with ending Zionism. That's the dominant faction. And you're not aligning with that faction or with those goals. It does my head in. You know, you actually think that you can represent yourself as being pro-Palestinian, being pro-Muslim? Well, you're nothing but a colonizer. Whether you know it or not, you're nothing but a colonizer. You're serving the colonizers. And if you don't know that that's what you're doing, then wallahi, you need to just get out of politics because you're in over your head. Look, the truth is that a lot of, and I've said this before, a lot of decolonial thought and decolonial theory, in my opinion, has actually served to amplify Western power narratives. They did this to us, they did that to us, they oppressed us, they subjugated us, you know, they destroyed us. In most of these narratives, you won't find any recognition of agency in the Muslim world, in the global South, among colonized people. The narrative is that the West, the colonizers, had absolute power, and we're nothing but weak pawns in their games. We've been demolished. We've been exploited, brutalized. We're powerless. That's it. We have no agency. We can only ever have and we can only ever be what the West allows us to have and allows us to be. Yes, there's no question, obviously, about what the West did in the global South, in the Muslim world, in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East, in Central and South America. There's no question about what they did. They did what they did, and we all know what they did. But we can't afford to internalize their narratives about their power and their supposed supremacy. No, we're capable people. We're intelligent people. We have real civilization. We have real values. We have governance in our parts of the world. We have good people. We have moral people. We have people with integrity. Don't tell me we don't. We have belief. We have understanding. And we have the ability to assert ourselves. We have the ability to govern ourselves, to organize our societies ourselves, to lead our societies, and to empower our societies. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening whether you like it or not, even though you dislike it. I mean, look, our societies, our civilizations, the truth is, did not collapse under colonization. Colonization was a hostile, harmful imposition on our societies, no doubt. It's something that we had to contend with. It's something that we had to navigate. And that's what we did do. You have to understand the continuum of our civilization. Colonization, Western imperialism, so on, their exploitation. These were challenges that we had to face. And we have faced it, and we still are facing it. And we did, and we have been working our way around that. There isn't pre-colonization and post-colonization. We don't measure our time on the basis of your interference or the basis of your presence in our countries. You are just one thing that happened to us, that's all. The fact of Western interference. temporarily changed some of our options. That's all. Changed what we had to deal with, and it changed the way we had to deal with it. But you never had absolute power. You never had absolute control or the ability to absolutely corrupt and disempower us, the ability to rob us completely of our agency. No, we've been working, all of our countries, on solving the problems that you created. We've been working on that. We've been working on solving the problem that you are. And we've been doing that on our own terms, in our own ways, according to the available options that we have. But the way some of you people talk, it's like you think colonization turned our societies into post-Islamic societies. That's not true. But you make it sound like you think colonization made us post-sovereign societies. You know, like we all just gave up on the idea of sovereignty. We all just agreed to bow down to the West forever. No, you're not that overwhelming. You understand, this sort of narrative is nothing but Western supremacist narrative translated into decolonial language. It reiterates that wherever the West goes, wherever the colonizers go, everyone just caves. Everyone is overpowered. Everyone is overwhelmed. Everyone is paralyzed. You know, and like some innate subservience gene in their DNA gets unlocked in the presence of white Western people. So look, there's two things here, at least two things. First, you don't believe that the Muslim leaders, that the Arab leaders, that the leaders of the Muslim world, or the leaders of the global South generally, you don't believe that they're even capable of competent leadership. You don't believe that they're capable of good governance. You don't believe that they're capable of strategy, capable of integrity. You don't think that they're capable of not being subservient. That's the way you think. And number two, you're deeply invested in the belief in Western supremacy. And I'm telling you, you're the only people left who are still clinging to that delusion. Nobody believes that anymore. It's embarrassing. You know, I'm seeing people commenting on the fact that there is this shift in the mainstream media, and the fact that we are seeing people who were previously either indifferent about Gaza or who were, in fact, vocally supporting the Zionists. And now they look like they're switching sides. And I have not seen anyone yet accurately explain why that is. But anyone who's been following Middle Nation for the last 2 years could tell you why. People who've been following Middle Nation understand they're not switching sides. They are on the same side that they've always been on, and that's the side of power. You can't comprehend that because you're stuck in that old idea that America itself is the absolute superpower on earth and Israel is their sidekick. So you actually think that possibly these people have suddenly grown a conscience, these people who are apparently switching sides. You're perplexed about why it was that seeing babies blown to pieces did not move them, but somehow they are now magically being moved by seeing images of starvation in Gaza. No, they weren't moved by the mass murder of babies, and they're not moved by the starving of babies. They are moved by the gravity of power. Whichever way power moves, they will move. You understand? And if you've been watching Middle Nation, then you would know that power is moving in the direction of regional stability. Power is moving in the direction of demilitarization in the region. It's moving in the direction of de-Zionization in the region. It's moving in the direction of Israel being integrated into the region with a transfer of patronage from the United States to the GCC. Do you understand? The GCC is going to be the new landlord for Israel. See, these governments that you want to tear down, that you're accusing unironically of being complicit in the genocide while you're sitting in that country, the country that has funded and armed and politically protected Israel for all these years, those governments that you're accusing, they have been busy building the architecture of sovereignty for decades now, discreetly, you know, little by little, undramatically, doing the practical work to build their own power and their own influence, to put them in a position of being able to become the authors of a new Middle East. That's what I mean about understanding that our civilization is a continuum. But you think that colonization was the end of our history, so you can't fathom what I'm talking about. No, colonization was a challenge that we had to deal with, that's all. And we've been dealing with it. And over time, alhamdulillah, our countries have navigated that. And they're now emerging with hard-won, carefully built autonomy and influence. But your mind is so westernized, you can't understand anything. And I'm sorry to tell you, Your mind is westernized in terms of having the permanent assumption that America holds all power all the time, no matter what. It's westernized in terms of almost your almost drunken acceptance of narratives instead of objective reality. Your mind is westernized in terms of how you view the Muslim world and how you view the global South and how you view our governments. You think that they're hapless, corrupt, incompetent sellouts. So you have no ability to understand real existing power dynamics. You have no ability to understand geopolitics or the trajectories of how the world is moving, or to understand how politics itself even works. I said you have a Western mind, Westernized mind, in terms of thinking that only American-style approaches are meaningful, that those are the only meaningful approaches, violence, confrontation, moralistic grandstanding, and so on. You have no comprehension of what diplomacy can do in real life, what strategic investment can do, what coordination and collaboration and deal-making can do. No, you just want everyone to be cowboys. You want everyone to act like gangsters because that's what you were raised on. You want everything to be like an action movie. You want quick fixes. You're like somebody asking ChatGPT to tell them how to make $1 million overnight with no hard work, no experience, no startup capital, no skills, no customers, no product. Tell me how, ChatGPT. You're addicted to simple-mindedness. You're addicted to self-soothing, self-indulgence, self-praise, self-centeredness, but never self-scrutiny, never self-reflection, never self-critique. You want the Muslims in the region to sacrifice their lives, their stability, their hard-won sovereignty, just so that you can go back to Starbucks with a clear conscience. That's what you're about. You're very happy to let other people die for your principles so that you can be vicariously self-righteous. That's why I said you're westernized. This is a westernized way of thinking. It's a westernized mentality. Look, American Muslims, Muslims in the West, obviously you're my brothers and sisters in Islam, and I love you for the sake of Allah. And I mean that sincerely. But you have to start recognizing what your society has done to you and what it is doing to you. You move to a polluted land and you start breathing in the same toxins that everyone else is breathing in. And then you develop the same health problems that they have, Muslim or non-Muslim. You'll be affected, and you are affected. That country is full of contamination, intellectual contamination, psychological contamination, spiritual contamination. You think that you can just be immune? Normalized idiocy, mental infantilization, relativism, reductivism, narrative over truth, adversarialism, point scoring, taqwa signaling, superficiality, contempt for knowledge, contempt for wisdom, contempt for complexity. And on top of all of that, arrogance. The arrogant assumption that you know best even when you know least. There's no other people in this world, honestly, who know as little as Americans do about any given situation in the world, but who feel more entitled than Americans to talk about it anyway. That's contempt for knowledge. That's relativism. Like you don't even know what you're talking about, but as long as you self-identify as knowing what you're talking about, you should be listened to. One brother asked me if I thought it would be helpful for us to put together a sort of list of factual things that the Arab states have done for Palestine since October 7th. And I said we would already be doing more. If we did that, we'd already be doing more than they have done when they accused them of complicity. You have not substantiated your allegations, but now we're supposed to substantiate why your unsubstantiated allegations are wrong. When you're dealing with people who hold non-fact-based opinions, the facts aren't going to have any impact on them. They already don't care about facts and reality. If they cared about facts and reality, no one would ever need to give them a list because they'd already know. They'd already be informed. But you're talking about people who are uninformed, and that people who being uninformed does not cause them to hold their tongue. Meaning you're dealing with people who have no actual interest or respect for the truth. That's worse than being ignorant. You're a straight up liar. Westernized, you see? Rasulullah ﷺ told us to be disciplined and to hold our tongues when we don't have information, when we don't know something. But your society taught you to speak up no matter what, no matter how uneducated you are. They taught you that every voice deserves to be heard, No, no, they don't. Every voice does not deserve to be heard. When you speak without knowledge and your statement does not end with a question mark, you basically just lied. Look, Hamas has existed for almost 40 years, okay? And they've been doing what you all think is what they should be doing, right? The approach that you all approve of, armed resistance, valiant, uncompromising, confrontation, right? Okay. During that same period of time, the GCC have been diversifying their economies. That's what they've been doing. Building their political and economic clout, gaining influence, gaining leverage, not only across the region, but also in the West, in America. And those people are going to be the ones that will subdue Israel, not Hamas, not Hezbollah, not Iran, not your so-called axis of resistance. No, the traitors. Yes, that's what you call them, the traitors, the complicit, the treacherous, the sellouts, the bootlickers. Well, those are the ones who are going to defeat Zionism. I'm sorry to tell you, although you dislike it, those are the ones who are going to defeat Zionism. Now, I'm not saying that Hamas could have done what the GCC has done. Obviously not. Hamas did the best they could with what they had, with the circumstances that they were in. And of course, I'm also not saying that armed resistance in and of itself is invalid. Certainly not in the case of Gaza. The fact that I even have to explain this is only because you have that westernized mentality, that westernized mindset that makes it almost impossible for you to ever get the point. But the point is, all of our people have been doing the best they can to navigate and to get out from under colonization and get out from under imperialism. And if that has meant compromise until you have the ability to not compromise, then that's what it has meant. If it means having to accept saying yes until you have the fortified ability to say no, that's not selling out, that's getting out. And that requires long-term thinking, long-term intention, long-term planning, long-term conviction and will and discipline and focus. But this isn't something that your society teaches you. No, they don't want you to have those abilities. So because you don't have those abilities, you can't recognize it when other people have those abilities. You can't comprehend that. We all love and admire Salah ad-Din. But you realize that if Salah ad-Din had died halfway into his reign, he would have gone down in history as a villain. Because very often the difference between a hero and a villain is just their intention until the outcome is achieved. You understand? You might think that someone is a villain until they achieve a good outcome. And you might think that someone is a hero until they achieve an evil outcome. Now, of course, there's no way that we can know intentions, but we can see plausible positive outcomes that can potentially result from a ruler's actions. And then you exercise husn al-dhan, husn al-dhan, that this positive, plausible outcome is exactly the intention that is driving their decisions. So, for instance, think about it. The GCC pumped money into Egypt. That decreased American leverage over Egypt, and that increased Gulf leverage over Egypt. Had they not done that, it would have been much more difficult for Egypt to defy and to reject American demands that they bring Gazans into Sinai and collaborate with Israel's ethnic cleansing of Gaza. That's how it works. That's how real politics works. Saudi Arabia established relations with Iran. Iran joined BRICS. Saudi Arabia aligned with BRICS. Egypt joined BRICS. UAE joined BRICS, okay? That has opened doors for Iran to integrate and to cooperate with the region, thereby ending decades of hostility. Had that not happened, Iran would not have been able to directly retaliate against both Israel and that American base in Qatar without uncontrollable escalation. BRICS, regional coordination, GCC money, all organized the removal of Bashar al-Assad. That's how that happened, against the wishes of the neocons, against the wishes of the Zionists. I know that many of you probably have fallen for the narratives of the camouflage neocons, that hype the so-called axis of resistance. So you might imagine that Bashar al-Assad was somehow a thorn in the side of the Israelis, even though he never lifted a finger against them. All he ever did was mass murder Muslims. But his removal was the only way to move Syria towards stabilization and development. That's a fact. They wanted Syria to remain in a neutralized state of indefinite civil war. Now, Israel's trying right now to interfere with Syria's stabilization, using the Druze as mercenaries and so forth. But look, they are against a power consortium that is far bigger than they are. GCC, Turkey, Iran, the A National OCGFC, the Zionists and the neocons are no match for them, period. The only bargaining chip that Israel has is violence, and the more they use that bargaining chip, the worse their own negotiating position becomes, whether we're talking about Syria or we're talking about Gaza. You understand? Because of Gulf capital, basically because of Gulf capital, a new order is being created in the Middle East. And they have won over the A National OCGFC to that plan, which means that America is on board with this plan because the A National OCGFC dominate America. So the Gulf, America, the A National OCGFC, they're all backing this plan. And that means that Israel has no option but to go along with this plan. I've been talking about this literally for years at this point, and it's playing out right in front of your eyes. And if you can't see it, then it's only because it's either because you don't want to see it, or because your westernized, compromised mind is so cognitively dissonant that you just can't really compute reality anymore. Well, of course, it could be both. It could be both possibilities. I'm telling my brothers and sisters in America, you need some self-awareness. And I mean so that you can heal your mind, because there is damage. You have to recognize that. Wallahi, you have to recognize there's damage. And you need to know that everyone outside the West, everyone outside of America recognizes this about you. Your thinking processes are damaged. And as long as they are damaged, you're not going to be able to understand what's going on in the world. You're not even going to be able to understand what's going on in your own society. And you're definitely not going to be able to contribute in any useful way. Let me tell you something about the West. And yes, specifically about people from Western Europe, the Anglo-Saxons, what you call white people. But of course, it's inaccurate to say white people because, you know, they're not all the same. Just like Eastern Europeans, for example. They're generally different from the Anglo-Saxons. But you know, in America, you can basically go by that categorization, white, because that's how their system works over there. But I generally hesitate to use that categorization because it's a fake categorization. We're not talking about any genetic, immutable, innate qualities. We're talking about culture. Okay, so you have to understand that at the absolute core of this culture, at the fundamental center of the Western psyche, there is one pulsing, permanent driver, and that's envy. Envy for every genuine civilization, every other culture, every other people. I'm telling you, they exist in a profound state of insecurity, profound and volatile state of insecurity. That's why they can't leave anyone alone. They're obsessed. It's an envious obsession. You know, you can mistake envy for love, for admiration, for appreciation sometimes, because superficially, they can manifest in similar ways. But the end point of envy is to destroy the object of their envy. They never want to see you thrive. They never want to see you succeed. Certainly, they don't want to see you succeed without them. But the truth is, the only way that you can succeed, the only way that you can thrive, is without them. Because they are absolutely driven by the compulsion to tear you down, by the compulsion to destroy you. This goes very deep. I can talk about it some other time, you know. But you have to know this about them. Everything that they tell you, every advice that they give you, every expression of support that they give you, every expression of solidarity, every move that they make to try to act like they're with you, that they care about you, it all grows from a seed of envy. And the intention is always to destroy you. I'm not even saying it's a conscious intention, but it is the intention. So I'm saying that you're surrounded by this culture. You are immersed in this culture that envies you and loathes you and your culture. They have informed you. They have educated you. They have shaped your understanding, meaning they have warped you. They have undermined and sabotaged you mentally, intellectually, psychologically, and so on. They lied to you constantly. They misled you. They misinformed you. They miseducated you. They misshaped your understanding. And now they've got you aligning yourselves, affiliating yourselves with them against us. You know, with the people who envy and despise you and who want to ruin you against the people whose very nature is to love you. If you want to talk about complicity, there's no one on earth more complicit than you are. Let's be frank. You're the last people in the world who should be talking about complicity. I mean, just the fact that you are even accusing others of complicity, that in and of itself makes you even more complicit, because you're deflecting from actual responsibility and actual accountability. And this is a learned reflex that you got from that sick culture that you're immersed in. I mean, imagine. It's like an arsonist who's wagging his finger and clicking his tongue and pointing at the neighbors of a house that he set on fire, and accusing them of being complicit in the crime of arson that he committed because they don't happen to own fire hoses with which they could put that fire out that he started. That's what you look like. Meanwhile, those very same neighbors that he's accusing of complicity are the ones who are going to rebuild that house that he burned down. You're becoming a laughingstock. And the next stage after being a laughingstock is to be scorned. And the next stage after that is to be ignored. Means you're cutting yourselves off from the ummah. You are teaching the ummah to ignore you. And if we ignore you, then you're not going to be left with anyone but with those envious, hateful people whose envy and whose hatred is what got you to the point you're at now. And then where are you going to be? Now look, I'm saying all of this, and frankly, I don't expect you to listen. I don't think you will listen. I don't know if you can listen. I don't know if you can listen and process what I'm saying. Because like I said, you live in a society that pours pollution into your ears, into your eyes, and into your brain 24/7. But I sincerely hope that you do listen and that you do process what I'm saying. Because I'm telling you, and you need to know, those people around you, they're never going to change. And as long as you try to convince yourself that they will change, or that they can change, or that they're going to change, then they are going to be the ones who are changing you, and not for the better.